who's done quite a few bits and pieces on the Cambridge circuit for I don't know quite how many years, I should have asked. Please give a huge round of applause for Hisham Zayadeen.
Thank you, folks. Are you having a good time? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Bits of enthusiasm. Okay, so I'm just going to do an introductory bit, and in this bit, don't mind if my eyebrows are doing funny things, because I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel over here in terms of material, and I've decided that, if things get really difficult, I'm going to have to fall back on the eyebrows, just to kind of, give it a little bit more variety, okay? Now, I have to say, as far as battle cries go, that is not a terribly inspiring one. Remember, my fellow soldiers, if all else fails, fall back on your eyebrows. Leave a corpse that looks determined. Not surprised. Now, I had put perhaps some rather unnecessary pressure on myself here, because for some reason I assumed that because this was at the end of Welfare Day, it had to have some kind of mental illness-related theme. And the second thing was that I thought that it might be a dry evening. And that's quite tricky, because you see, we don't talk about it, but there is an integral symbiotic relationship between your personalized versions of alcoholism and our personalized versions of success. It's what lubricates the whole system and keeps it going. I once met a chap in in clinic. Whew, good Lord. Very, very different things. I once met a chap in clinic who told me that, they say doing coke makes you a more interesting person. Actually, the thing is, doing coke makes the other people you're doing coke with interesting enough to be bearable. Right? And I think there's a fair bit of truth there that is relevant here. Not usefully, but it's relevant. Okay, so basically the alcohol is supposed to make me seem funnier to you, or at least me seem more interesting to you. I hadn't known that there would be beer available, because I came here completely blasted. And so the thing is that, I'd find all of you terribly interesting, but that's not kind of the direction that we're going in. It's probably fortunate. Looking around, some of you I don't think would be up to the task, really. Okay. Just as an aside, there is that other thing also, that apparently, alcohol makes other people seem more sexually attractive, right? And that may be true. I think I've just not met somebody who's drunk enough. Okay, so what I was going to do was try and stick to something vaguely mental health themed. I've now realized that it's unnecessary, but I'm too committed to back out at this point in time. Okay? I also feel a bit of pressure because I'm a psychiatrist, and I sort of feel like there are several fine lines I have to straddle here, and probably what I'm going to end up doing is impaling myself on one of them. Okay. But I'll stop procrastinating and I'll start. Okay? There once happened to be a time when I was sitting with two soldiers who were reminiscing and laughing about their last tour of duty. They'd both been in an army vehicle that had gone over an IED. And there was a massive explosion, and they both lost a leg each. And one of them said, "Do you remember, I was holding up this foot and said, 'I think you've dropped something.'" And the other guy said, "I haven't, that's yours." And they were laughing, and there were tears streaming down their faces, and I just joined in and I said, "That's absolutely priceless." And they stopped and stared. Because what I had been was a complete dick. They had granted me the privilege of listening in on the story of their trauma. And I had taken that as permission to run in and say, "Can I play with the prosthetic legs now?" The thing is that you sometimes do need to laugh to get over the pain. But it's generally you who has to laugh at your own pain. It doesn't work very well if other people are laughing at your pain. And that's one of those things that you need to be a little sensitive about. Okay, I'm trying to kind of sound profound here, because I'm sort of struggling to be funny about this. Yeah, I don't know if that's come across. Really. But the thing is that actually when it comes to matters that relate to mental illness, I do find it kind of hard to be funny. It's one of my rules in comedy that actually I'm willing to make jokes about psychiatrists, but I'm not willing to make jokes about mental illness because it's hard to find something funny in it. And I think that unless you've somehow gotten membership of that club, it doesn't feel like you can actually, poke fun at it from the outside. Right? It requires, I think, a certain kind of mind blindness to do that. And I struggle with this. So I'll give you an example. Why did the schizophrenic cross the road? For the same reason that the diabetic crossed the road. Because as the sage Batman said, it's not who I am, it's what I do that defines me. Right? And what that means is that we are all road crossers. It's what defines us. It doesn't define us very well, but it does define us. Now the first part of that was, it's not who I am. And that's right, who I am is not a diabetic or a schizophrenic, right? I know that I'm kind of parodying that quote. It's a bit like thinking that, in the words of John Lennon, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not. That is not my joke, I should say. That is from the movie Dinner with the Schmucks. It was a far more powerful illustrator of the weakness of my joke, right, than my actual joke itself. But anyway, you can have it, and I've got this on video that I am giving the necessary credit. Okay. But the whole point is that it's not who I am. Having schizophrenia or having diabetes doesn't define who I am. It's just a part of my identity, right? And it's as much of a part of my identity as I want it to be, right? And I get to make that choice. Nobody else does, right? And that's the whole point, that this is something that I can choose to do. It's not something that somebody else can choose to do for me, right? So to go back to the wisdom, it's not who I am, it's what I do that defines me. Because having schizophrenia is not like, say, or any mental illness, it's not like, say, being a wanker, right? Because it's not who I am, it's what I do that defines me. Unless you're a wanker, in which case it's both. Now, but personally, I would very much prefer that the word schizophrenic ultimately is accorded the same status as the N-word, in that it's available to the community to use for themselves, should they choose, but for everyone else, it would be an awful embarrassment to actually say it, right? The rest of us will just have to say things like people with schizophrenia, which is far more appropriate, okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very mindful that I've had very little to say and taken a very long time to say it. But I think what I'd like to sort of conclude on a day like today is that it's one of those days where we have to recognize our unity, what sort of we have in common, what brings us together, and how we sort of find our way to compassion for our fellow men. Because in the metaphorical eyes of the cosmos, we are all roadcrossers. I once happened to have the opportunity to sit in a conversation between two people with bipolar disorder who were talking about the things that they did when they were psychotic. And I just listened. Thank you very much.